As dads, some days we feel like we have all the answers, and some days we feel like we don't have a clue. If that describes you, you're at the right place. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. Hi, I'm Ted Lowe, and I'm your host of the All Pro Dad Podcast, where each week we take a look at just one question. We talk about what the experts say. We talk about what we've gotten wrong mostly, occasionally what we've gotten right, and we give you just one simple but powerful pro move. And today, I'm excited. Bobby, Are you excited? Because
I'm very excited.
Bobby, I'm always excited. You're here. Bobby, my co-host. So Bobby is the, I should know this by now, Bobby, but you have got such a resume, it's hard for me to keep up with it. Bobby is the marketing media specialist and copywriter here.
Yeah.
First.
Enjoy the opportunity to write articles for All Pro Dad. We do the podcast stuff for All Pro Dad. If you haven't signed up for the Play of the Day, you want to get some daily inbox tips, sign up, Play of the Day, allprodad.com.
Absolutely. It's great stuff there. You and your wife, Jocelyn, live here in Seminole, Florida.
We're in Florida, and we got 3 little kids. Yeah.
3 little kids.
Not so little anymore. They're getting bigger by the day. Yeah.
And you and I are both very excited with our guest today.
Yeah.
Dale Alexander, welcome, buddy.
How are you?
We're good. We're excited you're here. We have a mutual friend that we've just connected through, Mr. Danny Dukes. So shout out to Danny Dukes, right?
Hey, Dan, yeah. Great musician. He's an entertainer. He's a fantastic person.
He is a great human. Well, Dale, you've got a great resume. We're gonna dive into our question, but the most impressive part of your resume is the fact that you can do a handstand on a skateboard and going pretty fast from what I've seen. And I got to tell you, buddy, I've never been more shocked to see anything in my life.
Didn't expect that from a 60-year-old, did you?
I didn't, but you're doing a fine job. You were telling me earlier that when you go to the skate park, kids are like, what?
The kids come up to me and they all laugh at my 1980 skateboard from my high school. And I'll go to one end of the skate park and drop a handstand from one end to the other. And it has shut the skate park down. Every kid in there is like, dude, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then for the rest of the day, you're in the club and they talk to you. So you're cool.
I'm getting jittery right now because my wife got hurt on a skateboard like 2 months ago and she's on crutches still. So I'm getting jittery just thinking about skateboards.
I'm more comfortable.
Can we move on? I don't want to talk about skateboards anymore.
We will move on. Dale, as impressive as that is,
thank you.
One of the most impressive things, or the rest of your resume, is your well-known employee benefits broker and certified financial planner. I needed you long ago. You combine your passion for living with speaking opportunities to impact others' lives. You have served on the board, or serving on the board, of John Maxwell's Leadership Foundation, Camp Highland, and a North Point Ministries elder. And you're just here. You say this all. I'm just here to help change people's lives. And
right.
You live that, my friend.
That's right. My passion is to try and change a generation's saving and giving habits. And I think we can do that starting today.
Awesome. Yeah.
What is the wildest things that your kids have ever talked you into buying?
So I'm always talking to my kids about money. And before I answer that question, it's important to have other people with good wisdom pour into our kids also, because half the time we didn't listen to our moms and dads, right? But there were other influencers in our lives, a coach, a youth advisor, a pastor, a teacher, who said things that we had said our parents had said all along, but we didn't listen to them, but we listened to someone else. So thank you for having me, and grateful to have this opportunity. I don't take it lightly. A plane.
A plane?
Just, Dad, why don't you get a plane? Like, that's just a random, just go to the store and buy a thing of toothpaste for us. Yeah. Just, why don't we get a plane?
Yeah.
Let's talk more about
my kids haven't asked for a plane yet, but we just a couple weeks ago we were doing Christmas lists, and it was so funny, like the differences in the list, because I have a 5-year-old, I have a 9-year-old, and a 13-year-old. And the 13-year-old, just every book that's ever been written, I want all of them. I'm like, okay, awesome. The 9-year-old brought me a sheet of paper that just said $1,000. That's what he wrote on the top, and I was like, okay, that's easy, I guess, but also hard. And then my 5-year-old came over and just wrote cat, and that was just right on the top, cat. I was like, what a wild thing. So kids at every age have different desires, but they also are learning about money at different ages. Like my 5-year-old has no idea what a cat costs. My son doesn't even understand what $1,000 is. He just thinks it's a big number. Yeah. And my daughter doesn't know what the books add up to. She just wants them all. Yeah. So it's funny how kids relate to money.
Plane. Are you even my child? Yeah. A plane.
Yeah. That's probably more than a cat.
I mean, we fight against ever buying a first class seat on a plane.
Oh, man.
So kids don't come into the world understanding about money. We teach them. What's the most important lesson we could teach our kids about money?
And we're really going to dive into that in this lesson. It's starting off inside financial margin. Let me start by saying this: getting money right is not hard. There's just a lot trying to make it impossible.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard. Spend less than you make for a long time. Thank you all for having me. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. But there's a lot trying to make it impossible. And many of us have a weight that we may have done it wrong, or we don't know what to do. But there's a lot trying to make it impossible coming at us to try and have us get it wrong. And we can start off by, first of all, teaching our kids to live inside financial margin.
Yeah, that's good. What are the things that get in the way of making that happen?
We have so much coming at us today. For example, have you ever noticed if we start talking about lawnmowers tomorrow, John Deere ads start, or some lawnmower ads start popping up, that's not coincidental.
Right.
And they're very effective. And if you multiply, it's easy, just shop now, buy now. And you multiply that times hundreds of thousands of those ads popping up over the course of a lifetime, it's almost impossible to stay successful with that type of advertising coming at us. And it's very effective. So that's why setting up a process to automatically take you to the wealth and the life that you want is the way wealth is created. There's nothing magical about it. The wealthy have just figured out how to have less going out than is coming in. It's not hard, and we're going to talk about that. That's why I'm here today, is to talk about how to do that. But there's just so much coming in. There's so many distractions. I call it the drift, and we'll talk about that, the drift. And when you're unaware of the drift, you end up somewhere that you don't want to be. In fact, let me dive into that.
Sure.
Because it kind of sets up what this whole talk is about. Have you ever noticed when you're out in the ocean, everybody loves to go to the ocean. It's fun. You're out there playing. But have you ever noticed when you're in the ocean and 45 minutes later, when you're ready to come back in, you're a half a mile down the beach?
Right.
You never realized when you were drifting. But you ultimately realized you had drifted. My pastor said one time, nobody realizes when they're getting lost. Everybody realizes when they are lost.
That's good. Yeah.
And the way that we live in Jacksonville Beach. I love surfing. And if you're surfing, I would always tell my kids, paddle back to where is home. And usually if I'm there, my wife's on the beach, and I would consider her home, the dream, the goal. Where do you want to end up? Paddle back through the current, through the drift, right, to where you want to be, so that when you get ready to go home, you haven't drifted, right? And here's the thing about money. Your dream has to be stronger than the drift. And if it's not, you're going to get to the end of life. This happens relationally, spiritually, financially, healthily, new word alert, health, right? Health. Yeah. Your dream has to be stronger than your drift. So when you're ready to go home, you're where you should be.
Yeah, it's interesting. You use the analogy of surfing. I'm not much of a surfer, but I go to the beach a lot. We live in Florida, and so we know this drift all the time. And what's, really a relatable thing for kids probably is that the drift is fun. Right? Like they're having a great time. So when you're talking about money stuff, they're like, oh, we're having a great time. Everything is good. And then you look up and you're like, oh, there's no money left. And kids, I know at least for my kids, they just think that money comes out of that ATM. It just naturally comes out. All you gotta do is go up there and touch it and the money comes out. And they don't have a concept that it only comes out to a certain point. And I hope that we are teaching them that slowly as they get older. But in my 5-year-old's mind, there's always bread. There's always electricity, because mommy and daddy work hard to make that happen. But in her little mind, it's just there. We don't have to work for it. It just shows up. And so I think the drift is something we should fight back against, because that's kind of the stuff where we all get lost.
Well, I first started learning about you through Danny, and what was so great is he and Joni, his wife, were sharing with me your content. And as a speaker, to have someone else who could articulate it so well from just hearing you speak it was extraordinary. So we're excited to have you here for today. And our question of the week, and each week, again, we have every episode, is how should we teach our kids about money? How should we teach our kids about money. We're going to dive into that because I know you're chomping at the bit. And Dale, you give a very specific rule for this. And this was the thing that Danny and Joni, our friends, mutual friends, told me. I remember exactly where we were sitting when Joni starts explaining this rule that you have to teach kids about our spending and how money works. Will you give our listeners your rule?
So I'm always talking about how did I come up with this? First of all, I've been a certified financial planner for decades, since the 90s, and I'm always talking to my kids about money. And one night in November of 19, my middle son said, "Dad, you need to tell all of our friends the story, this principle about money that you talk about." So I got a bunch of kids together and told this story, and it kind of had legs. So I went on and wrote the lesson and then the book. So I say it's the most important life decision a young adult will make. Well, and it deals with money. Now, I'd probably pop back and go, hey, the person I choose to marry is my most important life decision, not spiritual, life decision. Mm-hmm. And I would say, while that's very important, if we don't get money right, half of our marriages are gone. Mm-hmm. And many of the other half of marriages that make it, they're not as great as they could be because of the weight of money. Mm-hmm. And here's how to solve that. And a lot of parents don't know what to say to their kids about money. So here's how to solve that. When young adults, this is what the whole book's about, the talk about money. When young adults get out and go get their first real job, they're going to go from making basically nothing to the most money they've ever seen in their life, at least on a regular basis. Mm. When they get that first job paycheck, instead of taking and spending all 100% of that paycheck, stop at 70%. Make 70% your 100%. Watch this. 70% of that first job check is still going to be the most money you've ever seen in your life. You're at zero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Stop at 70. Make 70 your 100. Here's why they can do this. You don't have a standard of living established yet. And whatever number you accept as your standard, 70%, that becomes your reality. And in 2 months, you'll never know that 70 is not 100. It's all I've ever known as 100, and it's going to sting for a couple of months. It's going to hurt. Look, being financially successful is hard. Being broke is hard. Pick a hard.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
It's going to sting for a couple of months, and then it's just your 100. By the way, the other 30, you take 20% and you invest it, and you take the last 10% and give it away. I don't care who you give it away to. Give it away. Make 70 your 100. And here's the most important thing. This is why you had me come down here to do this, is this next statement. These young adults have one shot to make this happen. Because if they start taking 3 of those first job paychecks, spending all 100% of it, they will never, you'll say you will, they will never back down to 70. It's over. And you will live life like most of America, which is broke, stressed, angry, and anxious because of the weight of money. And the amount of money you make really has no effect on this. Because most money problems, they're not problems about money. I can prove that. They're not problems. So you won't out-earn your way out of this problem. You'll just spend more.
Yeah, I remember being 16, 17, 18 years old, working part-time jobs as a kid. I was bagging groceries at the grocery store. And I got the first paycheck. I remember it was $224. And in my head, $224 might as well have been $1 million because I'd never gotten a paycheck before. And you know what I did? I bought a $160 pair of basketball shoes. And because my mom at that point's like, if you want shoes, I'll give you $50 because I loved basketball shoes. You can have $50, and anything more than that, you got to come up with the difference. And so she just gotten me shoes. I didn't need new shoes, but I really wanted these $160 shoes. And I went and I bought them, and I came home and I put them on the table. I'm like, Mom, I got these shoes. And she goes, great. How much money you got left? And I was like, well, not much. She goes, okay, and just walked away. And that was the last $160 pair of basketball shoes I ever bought. Right. Because I was like, this stings, man. This hurt. Like, I really wanted these. And now that I have them, there's kind of like some regret. Like, that was a stupid decision. I could have taken them back, but I wore them anyway. But that's just part of it. I was like, man, this wasn't worth it. And I learned that lesson as a young kid with my own money, but no one had told me that. I had to learn it the hard way. My parents, for better or worse, they said, you make the mistake, you figure it out. And then years later, I get to be a young adult, and I didn't know the 70 rule. And it's hard to claw your way back. That 30% is powerful, right? That
It is.
30%, once you use it.
And if they start spending that extra 30%, at their age, that 30% is going to make zero difference in their life at that age. Zero difference. But here's what it will make if you start on 70%. I use a $36,000 starting salary in the book, in the lesson. Every kid, that's a normal starting salary out of high school, college, and that's a normal starting salary in America. Would you agree? I don't care if you work at Walmart, law, teaching, UPS, that's a normal starting salary. Every kid in the auditoriums I speak in can achieve that. So you make 70% your 100, and people go, how you do it? You figure it out. You get you 5 roommates, you stay where you are an extra year, beans and rice, rice and beans, as Dave Raymond, you figure it out.
Yeah.
You 70%, and you invest 20 and you give 10% away. At the end of your working life, you will have given away $437,000 given away and have $5.2 million on a $36,000 salary. Look at me, that does not care what kind of family you came from. I haven't said a thing about education. It doesn't care what race, what faith, or what country you're from. Money doesn't care. Principles don't care. And if you're listening to this, I'm holding up my phone. And this phone is lying to us. This phone is telling kids, you'll never be able to do it. The only way that you can do it is to watch them do it. And I've studied these people on social media, and they're broke. If you dig deep, they're broke. Anyone can be one of the wealthiest, most generous people in the world. It's not hard. There's just a lot trying to make it impossible.
So I want to double click and go back. You said there's power in giving. When you say to a young person, hey, give 10% away, talk about the power of giving in terms of what we're saying to our kids.
So first of all, somebody said, why 10%? Why not $20? And I say this, because $20 is not going to change them, and it's not going to change you. 10% gets everybody's attention. You have to think about where you're giving 10% to. I'll come back to where do you give your money to, which is not my decision. So one of the reasons is this phone that I'm holding up. Do you know what this phone is telling us to do? And I love talking to kids in my lessons in schools. Why would I ever give money away? Are you crazy? It's my money. Why would I give my money away? Well, let's talk about it. This phone, social media, is telling us to get more for ourselves. This is telling me to keep more for myself, to hoard more for myself. And these phones, social media is telling us that the way to success and happiness is by serving ourselves. It's the world's greatest lie. And I don't know if you know anybody watching this dealing with anger, loneliness, anxiety, depression, hopefully not worse thoughts. Part of the reason is the world is telling us to serve ourselves. And if somebody's sick and tired of being sick and tired of just not knowing what is my passion, what's my purpose, why am I here? It's about flipping the script and becoming second and serving others. The mind doesn't allow itself to feel hopeless when it's giving hope. It doesn't allow itself to feel. There are chemicals in our brain. We were built, Ted, God built our brains with a reward system. If you've ever done anything, a service project for someone, mowed some elderly person's home, hold a door open for an extended period of time, give your mom a big old Christmas gift at Christmas, it gives you a good feeling. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins that get released in our brains. What if your whole life were built around just dropping grace bombs on everybody who came behind you? What if your whole life were built around just doing for others? The second reason is, Dale, I got to have more. The second reason is you can't outgive what you outget. In my life, this is an important topic to talk about giving. In my life, the more we've given financially, we've seen more come back. I'm not going to say that's going to work for anybody else. But here's what I will say. And this is a trick that young adults don't know about giving. It's a trick. When you start giving, well, people go, well, if I give you 10, I'm going to want to get 12 back, whatever 10 and 12. Let's say it's $1. If I donate 10, I want to get 12 back. Here's the trick to giving. When you start giving that, quote, 10, the 12 you think you want to get back when you start giving is going to completely change. Because everything about life gets new perspective when you start giving. What you think you want to get back as a giver is going to completely change because it's going to grab your heart and it's going to completely change your perspective about life.
So you're getting back way more than $12.
And it's not even dollars you care about when you start giving.
Yeah.
So good.
Yes, I totally can relate to this because a couple years ago, right around Christmas time, there was just a couple in our church. I don't even know which couple, but somebody left a envelope with my family's name on it and just said, "Hey, this is for the Lewis family." There was $400 in this envelope. And at the time, I hadn't really told anyone. I'd lost my job a couple months earlier. I didn't know that someone just, felt on their heart to give us money. And so that was a huge blessing for us at the time. And so a year later goes by, I had found a job since then. And my wife and I said, what if we gave $400 to someone in our church, just randomly, And so we prayed about it. We kind of figured out who it should be. And it's become an annual tradition now. It's the exact same number. Every year we try to make sure we budget. So at the end of the year, we have $400 to give to someone randomly in our church. It's the coolest thing we do every year. I love it. And you kind of like drop it off and you just walk away and you just, assume that it blesses them. I don't stick around to see their facial reaction or anything like that. But we know in our heart that it's a reciprocal thing. Like, it was a blessing to us. Can we bless someone back? And we've included our kids on it now. Like, we've told them, like, hey, someone's gonna get this gift from us. It's gonna be really cool. And they get into it now. They get excited. Who should it be? We all pray about it. Who's gonna get the money this year? I love it. It's a cool thing. And I hope that they remember that. I hope it's a core memory for them so that years and years from now, they kind of implement something like that with their own families,
They'll talk a little bit to dads at different stages, because we've got dads at different stages learning. We've got some that are really young, like a couple of Bobby's kids. We've got some that have teenagers. How do you implement this rule with art? How do we help dads implement this today?
So and we'll tell where they can get this lesson. They can actually watch the talk online. But when you implement this or you start teaching this, you can break this down. I wrote this lesson for 16 to 24-ish young adults yet to get their first real job. I'm trying to get to young adults before they get that first paycheck, so that they set these numbers on small dollar amounts, so that when the big dollar amounts, they're in a groove. Start teaching these principles to kids base it on chore money. You can use these same percentages on chore money and teach them as you read or watch the lesson or read the book. You can kind of implement it on chore money. When my middle son, Grant, was growing up, we had someone cutting our grass. And I thought, look, I could pay that $40 to some company, or I could pay it to my son. So I started paying Grant, and he started mowing our yard, and he was just crazy about how good it had to look. And I said, Grant, I was going to pay you $25, but I'm going to pay you $40 because of your attitude. Because that's how the world works. The world's going to reward you for your attitude, and they're going to pay you. When you do more, they will pay you more, right? And so when you do more than you paid to do, the day will come when you're paid more for what you do, as Zig Ziglar said. So there are ways you can think through how to, and he had to save, and we had a notebook, and I wrote 401k, and he had to put that here, and I would match it. So I kind of taught them how that stuff works. So there are ways you can take these principles and base it on chore money. The greatest thing we can do is try and model this in our own lives.
So I have a question for you. This is awesome for someone like me who's got a 13-year-old, 9-year-old, 5-year-old. We got years coming up where I can implement this, hit it right before they get these paychecks. But for a dad who might be listening who's got a 22-year-old who is getting out of college, or they've had a part-time job and they've blown past the 70 already, okay, how can you rein them back in and say, hey, I know that this is going to be painful for you, but we got to figure out a way to get your 70 back to your 100. How do you do that?
And Bobby, not just children, but adults come up to me and go, if I didn't start on 70, what do I do now? Is it too late? No, there's hope. There's two things you got to do. Number one, as people lean in, number one, every new dollar coming into your house for the rest of your life, sorry to mess this up for you, but from this moment on, every new dollar, a raise you get at work, any kind of bonus you get at work, garage sale proceeds, a car we pay off, a car loan, that's new money coming in your house. Every new dollar for the rest of your life, never take more than half of it. It's new money. It's new money. You're not living on it now. And get to some seasons, and especially for a 22-year-old that's starting out in their career, when their trajectory of their income is going to go up, hopefully for the rest of their life, they're going to have new money for the rest of their life. Every new dollar, don't take more than half of it, right?
Yeah.
And before long, you're living on less and less of your gross income. And when you do that, when there's more margin, financial margin in your life, problems just tend to land lighter. Your spouse magically becomes a better spouse. Your boss magically becomes, our marriages magically get better. My children magically act nicer when we start getting more financial margin in our lives. That's the first thing. Every new dollar. When we pay off a car loan, what's the first thought that goes through our minds?
Oh, we got free money.
What can I go get next?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go get a new one.
I got
It's
extra.
sick.
Yeah.
Get to some seasons where maybe you go, let's not take any of this year. Let's take this whole amount and do the plan on this whole amount. Get to some seasons where maybe seasons where you don't take any of it and you're living on less and less of your total income. The second thing that you have to do is the money that you save, get it working hard and on turbocharge by investing in stocks of great companies of the world through mutual funds. And I get into what is that and how does that work? To let other, investment managers take small dollar amounts and look at hundreds of different companies and let then Harvard and Duke MBAs do the work for you and choose companies that it should go in.
Dale, I have a 24-year-old and 22-year-old. And my 24-year-old is a 7th grade math teacher. And he's like, Dad, I'm so rich. Like to him, like he is like, Dad, I can't even believe it. The great news is he had his mother instead of me because she's an accountant. She's very good at money. Like when we go into a store and I would throw a pack of Skittles up there, they would literally look at me like, does Mom okay with this? Like they didn't even want it. Like we're at Disney and my son looks and these kids are waving swords, glow in the dark swords. And he leans over to me and he's, I don't know, 7 or 8. And he goes, look at all these people wasting their money. And I didn't know where to be like, oh, his childhood is dead or way to go. And I've since learned it's been so much easier to have this conversation with them because of what Mom has instilled mostly into them. But the 24-year-old, we're talking to him about that. And we have one that's about to graduate. So I'm so excited to be able to say, hey, bud, let's talk about this.
I said this earlier to that point. Most money problems are not problems about money. 51% of Americans that make over $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. 30%
Wow.
that make over $250,000 are living paycheck to paycheck. And to show there are not problems about money, I was in a South Georgia school one day. A young girl in the top left raises her hand. I said, yes, ma'am. She goes, I can't live on 70% of my income. Now, she's a part-time high school job. I knew what she was going to say. And I go, why can't you live on 70%? And she said, because it cost me $100 to get my nails done. And every kid in that room went, oh! And I shut my mouth and the principal lit her up. That's not a money problem.
Yeah.
That's not a money problem. You go with us to the deepest parts of Kenya and you walk in that village in Karima, Kenya, and you tell those kids you spend $100 to get your nails done. They would say, y'all have lost your mind.
Yeah, but I can see how a kid gets to that point because earlier you mentioned the phone and how the phone with the advertisements are competing. So that girl probably loves, pick a random music artist, right? That music artist's Instagram page has a Ferrari, not a Toyota Camry, right? That music artist has like fancy jewelry. That, all the people that they're looking up to as, cultural icons or whatnot, or people to aspire to be, they're not living lives that are just scraping by. And so I do see how kids maybe would say, oh, well, I got to spend it. That's a hard issue. And maybe dads need to speak into that first and foremost and then go into the money talk. But yeah, there's a lot of competing interest on that girl probably. She thinks, I'm going to be pretty with those nails, right?
People go broke trying to convince people that they aren't broke.
Sure.
And we talk about this. We set up the starting point. The first question out of the gate is, if you look rich, you probably are rich. By the way, rich has nothing to do with money. You can be homeless and be rich. But if you look rich, you probably are rich. Wealthy people typically don't drive around in retirement plans. Wealthy people are plumbers and cleaners and they own car lots. The third highest occupation for a millionaire in this country, the third highest occupation is an educator. They're normal people that make normal money. They just spend abnormally less of it than everybody else. But social media doesn't say that. Yeah. Social media says the richer you look, the richer you are. Statistically, it's the opposite of that. Rich people act poor, poor people act rich.
Yeah.
That's more truth than I'm comfortable with, Bill. So thank you very much for that. Okay, we're excited because we get to talk to you about dads in just a minute, about how to help us dads to also deal with money. But Thank you, Dale, for this. This is so rich. Tell our viewers where they can find you.
So everything is at thetalkaboutmoney.com. So the book is called The Talk About Money, A Young Adult's Guide to the One Decision That Changes Everything. So everything is off thetalkaboutmoney.com. There's parent-child conversation starter tools. You can watch the whole lesson, 55-minute lesson online. The book has more, but everything is there. So
I wish I'd met you 20 years ago, Dale. That would help.
That would help
both of us. I'm glad I met you today because my kids are little, that's good.
Well,
Thank you.
each week we give our listeners, our viewers, what we call the pro move of the week. And so these guys are probably driving down the road, exhausted, coming home, from work. And what is one pro move today that guys can go, okay, I can do that would help them head in this direction of helping them talk to their kids about money? Because you've made this so clear. What's one pro move that they can make today?
Try and model this behavior. Say, I may not have done this right, but I want to get it right, and try and model that behavior. And the way that you do that is to have lasting change, because this is hard to have lasting change financially. To have lasting change in anything, you need 4 things: a passionate discontent and a powerful vision. You've got to get mad enough, passionate discontent. But not having a vision of what you want that anger to do for you is just frustration. So if you're listening to this and you really don't know where to start, I want you to get mad enough to do something about it. And second, I want you to have a vision, an end dream of what you want. I want you to know where that home base on the beach, I want you to know what home means. Because when the drift happens, and the drift is unawareness, greed, busyness, advertising, when the drift is hitting you, you need to know where to paddle back to. Get passionately discontent, but know what you want out of this. And if you do that, you can hang on and have lasting change in anything.
And so when we talk to our kids about that, like today, what is one question that maybe we could ask our kids that gets them thinking that direction?
Son, what kind of life do we ultimately want to have in this family? How do we, what legacy do we want our families to leave, and why?
I love that.
Start with what and why, not how.
Yeah.
When you just start teaching kids budgeting and things like that, that's minutia. No one cares. Everybody hates that. Everybody wants to punch budgets in the mouth. What and why should we care about this stuff? That's more important with our kids than how. How's easy? How's details? What and why? Those are the big things you want to talk about.
I love that.
Most people focus on how. Don't worry about that. Talk about what and why. It's the bigger things in life.
I love it. Dale, thank you so much.
Yeah, man.
This has been so great.
Thank you.
And viewers, thank you so much, as always, for listening. If you will you give us 1 minute and go on to your favorite platform that you listen to podcasts and give us a rating and a review. And in our show notes, if you want to know more tips and tricks, you can check out our LinkedIn profiles. And speaking of show notes, you can find Dale's book. You can find all the links to what he's talking about, how to find him. You can also find a video of him skateboarding on his hands, which if you don't do anything else, my pro move for you is to go watch this, but never try it. So we're going to go with that. But thank you most of all for listening. We know that you and your kids will be glad you did. Thanks for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the All Pro Dad Play of the Day, by going to allprodad.com/subscribe and get daily powerful and practical fatherhood tips in your inbox. The All Pro Dad podcast is hosted by me, Ted Lowe, produced by Bobby Lewis.